All right, welcome back. Today, we are diving straight into a completely mind-bending explainer on a narrative called The Descent, Signature in Iron's Crystal. It's a story that attempts to bridge a massive, almost impossible gap. We're talking about connecting ancient religious texts with modern high-tech crystallography. It details a purported scientific investigation into the very atomic structure of iron, claiming there's a hidden magnetic signature locked deep inside its crystal lattice.
I mean, really think about that question for a second. Can a rock, a 4.5 billion-year-old piece of space debris, literally hold a message? The text we're unpacking today centers around this exact, highly provocative idea. It proposes a fundamental structural difference between iron that fell from space as meteorites and the iron we mine from the earth and smelt ourselves. The narrative is basically asking us to consider if the atomic arrangement of ancient, spaceborne iron might actually contain a deliberate pattern, like a literal message, rather than just some random magnetic energy.
Part 1. The Ancient Meteorite Mystery. Let's get right into it. So picture this. To set the stage, we first meet our main protagonist, Dr. Rayhan Al-Assad. He's the lead crystallographer at the Paul Scherrer Institute's Spallation neutron source over in Switzerland. In the story, Rayhan takes what's cited as the oldest known iron meteorite on Earth, 4.5 billion years old, and places it into a highly advanced neutron depolarization chamber. Why? Well, he's looking at iron nanodomains. That's basically just observing how the tiny magnetic spins of iron atoms align at a microscopic level to create magnetism.
And what he purportedly finds in that chamber absolutely astounds him. The text describes him observing the domain walls along a specific crystal plane, and they're arranged in perfectly parallel lines. Literally, it's like they were drawn by a microscopic ruler. For Rayhan, this immaculate alignment instantly triggers a connection to an ancient verse from the Quran, Surah Al-Hadid, which translates to, "We sent down iron, in which is great might as well as many benefits for mankind." For him, the absolute key phrase here is "sent down," which of course perfectly aligns with the meteorite literally falling from space. But, every good scientific detective story needs a hardcore skeptic, right? Enter Dr. Ulrich Steiner. He's described as Rayhan's colleague and a very strict materialist. Ulrich immediately pushes back. He argues that searching for any kind of deliberate sentence or meaning written inside atomic structures is just, unscientific. He insists these iron domains are just the result of random energetic forces, nothing more. And this clash, it sets up the core investigation of our whole explainer, testing whether these microscopic patterns are truly random or astonishingly deliberate.
Which brings us to Part 2, a hidden word revealed. To actually prove his point to Ulrich, Rayhan can't just guess. The text describes a very specific, high-tech methodology he uses to map these microscopic magnetic vectors. Keeping the meteorite in the chamber, he meticulously charts the exact directions of the magnetic force along those unusually straight domain walls. Then, to visualize all this invisible data, he takes those mappings and renders a complete three-dimensional magnetic force microscopy image of the entire region. It's like building a 3D map of an invisible force field.
And here is where it gets wild. 30 degrees. Rayhan's calculations purportedly discover that the spin-rotation angle of each magnetic domain shifts by exactly 30 degrees. I mean, think about that for a second. It's a mathematically precise sequence of magnetic shifts repeating at exact 30-degree intervals across the whole crystal lattice. That is decidedly not random. And this builds to the absolute core of the whole narrative, the most massive claim of the story. When Rayhan steps back to look at the 3D visual of those 30-degree geometric shifts, the text claims they physically map out the shapes of the Arabic letters Ha, Dal, Ya, and Dal. Put this together and it spells the word Hadid, which literally means iron. According to the author, it's a three-dimensional magnetic holographic signature spelling the very name of the metal, embedded straight into the crystal plane of a rock older than our planet. No way, right?
Let's move to Part 3, the skeptic's counter-experiment. Of course, an extraordinary claim like that demands extraordinary proof. Ulrich immediately challenges the outcome and demands a control test using man-made iron. And this brings us to the structural heart of the narrative, the deep, fundamental contrast between two very distinct types of iron. On one hand, you have meteoritic or descended iron, stuff forged in the absolutely extreme conditions of a supernova explosion. On the other hand, we have mined iron, earthly ore that we've dug up, melted down, and structurally rearranged through human smelting. So, the text outlines that Ulrich runs his control test on a sample of pure ferritic stainless steel. The results from the chamber this time?
completely different. The man-made steel yields totally completely random magnetic spin flips. There's no 30-degree geometric pattern and absolutely no Hadid signature. In the story, Rayhan argues this happens because smelting and rearranging the iron essentially destroys its first instruction. Actually, think of it more like a pristine atomic blueprint established when it was born in space. Once we melt it, that blueprint is gone. Okay, part 4, the science of strength. Now, the story doesn't just stop at a cool visual pattern. It actually links this signature to physical strength, looping right back to that ancient phrase, great might. Rayhan measures the magnetocrystalline anisotropy. That's a big word, but it's basically just testing how magnetic properties change depending on the exact direction you measure them from. He discovers that the Curie temperature, which is the specific heat level where iron completely loses its magnetism, is uniquely 4 degrees higher right along the physical curve of the Ha in that magnetic pattern. This specific thermal anomaly indicates the atomic bonds along the lines of this hidden word are measurably physically stronger than the rest of the structure. According to the text, Ulrich, our ultimate skeptic, actually steps in to rigorously verify this thermal calculation himself. After analyzing the data, even he has to admit that the structural strength anomaly is not just a random coincidence. Ulrich supposedly confirms that, based on the evolutionary temperature history of the metal, this specific hyper-localized 4-degree increase in bond strength just cannot be explained away by standard natural processes.
And that leads us to the final chapter, part 5, the magnetic legacy. So, as we reach the climax of the source materials narrative, a burning question remains: is this 4.5 billion-year-old rock just a one-off freak of nature? To see if this signature actually replicates, the text says Rayhan travels to gather more evidence. He purportedly collects 5 completely separate iron samples sourced from various ancient impact craters way over in Siberia. The narrative wraps up with a massive conclusion within the story. Boom! All 5 Siberian samples display the exact same pattern within their body-centered cubic structures, while standard Earth-mined iron lacks it completely. The former skeptic, Ulrich, is described as being deeply moved by this. He even starts referring to the continuous 30-degree atomic spin as a magnetic tasbih, or an unceasing glorification. The story concludes by noting the original meteorite is placed on a 3D holographic display in the Geneva Science Museum, and Rayhan pens a book summarizing how the ancient claim perfectly mirrors this newly discovered reality. So as we zoom out from this narrative, visualizing that repeating holographic signature of the word Hadid, deep in the nanodomains, we are left to ponder a truly incredible intersection of astrophysics, crystallography, and ancient text. This explainer has walked us through a story that begs us to look at the very building blocks of our world differently. It challenges us to ask, does the true strength of a material lie simply in its physical properties? Or is there a deeper, hidden blueprint locked within its origin, just waiting to be read? It's a wildly fascinating concept, and one that absolutely leaves us with a lot to think about.